get it going. All right, I find it always helpful to take just a second at the very beginning to remind us of the underlying principles, and this that we are looking to have to become friends with people. We're not just looking forward to having them attend an event, but we're looking forward for them to become our friend. Well, why won't you do that? All right. Okay. And they remind you that, you know, you can easily feel overwhelmed, and that's the last thing I want to have happen. If you see something that sounds very interesting, but it's just feeling don't do it. Just put it on the list for next year. And do what works for you. Do what works in your context. Now, I'm going to be giving you the best ideas I've heard, but some of them are not right for you. That's not a problem. That's not a criticism. It's what works in your context. And I did divide the Zooms into 3 basic topics. Today we'll be talking invite and intrigue. Last time we had create and welcome, and the first one was build relationships. But they weave together, so there's going to be some overlap in the slides and stuff, but that's because they're all really part of one activity. If you recall, we looked at this and we said that roughly 10% of Americans say there's no higher power, and something in the mid 30% at the other end of the spectrum have a spiritual community that's fulfilling to them. More than that do drop into churches, more than 23%, but I'm saying has a really fulfilling relationship. And that means about 1 in 3. And, you know, some people will say it's 1 in 2, some will say it's 1 in 4. But the point is, a lot of people are willing to talk to us. And I think the word willing is important. They're not necessarily anxious. We've got to intrigue them, interest them. But the downside is they're very busy and they're very, very cautious because, up instead down. Because of all the negative impressions they hear from mainly from the media, but also, you know, around the water cooler or, you know, wherever they are, that the church is hateful, it's anti-science, it's anti-thinking, it's exclusionary, and it's been hijacked by politicians. And that's true on both sides. So here's the kind of the reasons. And as I've said every time, these are the criticisms we need to challenge. We need to try to say to people, you've heard that churches are exclusive and judgmental, and some are, but we're not. We just need to try to get that across, because only then is it possible they'll talk to us. And I came across this from an earlier Zoom. This was about a year ago. The church holding a book burning. And this past week, you may have seen in the newspaper that some people showed up with guns to a school board meeting saying that the Christian thing to do is to get rid of books. Now, I may or may not like some books, but showing up and threatening people, and they did, they threatened them. That does not make me want to associate with that group of people. And if that's what you have as an impression of a church, you're going to be very cautious. All right, I'm going to say the words landing page a lot. Excuse me, this could be a very powerful tool. Well, this is an example of a landing page I put together last year, and a couple of churches used, put in the real information. But that's all it is. It's a page on your website that is, I have it up there on top. It's just titled www.whatever yours is /BOTA. And the advantage of this is you can put that address on everything you use, and people can come and get all the key information they want. The idea is to have some photos and stuff and some names and try to encourage people to come.
Check and see.
Well, hold on just a second here. Okay. So what you do is you put something simple like this together. It can even be a poster you're doing, just as long as all the key information is in it. Put it on your website, name it like this, and then all you have to do from that point on is put the name on it, and everybody can get all the information they need. You don't want them having to page through your website to get what they need. You want to make it as convenient as possible. And you notice down at the bottom, I would have the link to our homepage. So if people do want to get more information, they can just jump right off that page and do it. And you also heard the phrase QR code. And if you don't, just if somebody doesn't know, this is what a QR code looks like. They're very easy to create. Do not, under any circumstances, pay to get them done. Do not sign up for some service and so they'll do it. There's plenty of free ones. And if you have any problems, send me your what you want the page name to be, what the page name is, and I'll create the QR code and send it back to you. I mean, it takes literally 30 seconds. So how do we intrigue them so they will respond to an invite? Probably one of the most important things to understand is it takes multiple touches. It's really very, very, very unlikely somebody's going to see one post, one ad, and come a-running. They've got so many reservations and such a busy calendar. We're asking them to change their calendar. So we need multiple times before we can intrigue them. And we do it multiple ways. Social media gives us the best result for the investment. And when I talk investment in this kind of thing, I'm primarily talking time, not money. But other things can be effective, and we'll talk about some of those. And a person who sees the message multiple times on different platforms is actually more likely to respond. And if you watch advertising by the pros, you will see they'll use the same symbol, the Geico, for example, in many, many different ways. And the idea is you link the two together. And we'll talk about the same rules. You have a half a second to grab their attention before they look away. You can think of this like the newspaper headline. You have 3 to 5 seconds to keep them interested enough that they're really going to pay attention, like the newspaper's first paragraph. Everything, of course, other than social media, should be understood from 6 feet away and in half a second from 6 feet away. So that's a glance. They have to be able to get an impression and get interested in a glance. They're unlikely to stand around looking at something. Very important. If your congregation steps up, you can accomplish a whole lot for very little money. And we're not talking about doing a lot of work. We'll talk about in a minute what we're talking about. But also think about who in your congregation is looked to for guidance or leadership. There's a couple or 3 people in your congregation, and if something suggested at an annual meeting, for example, everybody glances over at them to see what they think. Get those people on board. It doesn't necessarily mean they have to be active. They just have to be in favor. They have to be positive and certainly not be negative. Okay, non-social media. Don't try to recreate everything. Use the same graphics. General media weekly papers are usually the most responsive because they're actually hurting more for material, for content. Look around for the specialty papers. You know, the ones that are in the grocery store for free. Pick a couple copies up and see what they print. Some of them print miscellaneous articles. It doesn't take much effort. A good one in some towns I've seen is real estate, because they'll have an occasional article about meet your new neighbors. This is perfect for that. Media calendars. Some of them post, I was just looking around here, some of them will post them for 3 or 4 weeks in advance. So get at this as soon as you can. Look what order they post in. If they're posting alphabetically on each specific day, start with the word A. Get up to the top. Always use an engaging title. I like starting with fun, so I'm going to use this phrase several times. You make up the one you want. A pet festival and blessing. You know, the word festival brings me in to look. And also, please be sure to include your date, time, and place. You'd be surprised how often things go out that don't have that information. Find out how many words are allowed and use them. That's going to vary from publication to publication. Google your town and something like local calendars or just the word calendars. Some towns have community calendars up on the web. Again, just takes a couple seconds to load them up. You can look at a Facebook event if you want to do that. That's a good way to get the word out. I mentioned a landing page. A 60-second video, and that doesn't have to be video, it could be slideshow. Might be something they'll use on their electronic platforms. Even the weeklies are now doing electronic versions, and they're really hurting for content. So if you get them something, they may use it. And don't ignore the AM radio stations. I know nobody listens. Well, frankly, if nobody's listening, they're not going to be there. So somebody's listening, and it's probably in the hundreds of people. But there are, around here anyway, probably half of them are ones I would not want to be associated with. So try to get somebody to listen through, spend about an hour listening to different stations and pick the ones that that you would most like your church associated with, and then we'll talk about the news release to them in a second. For the news releases, again, the weeklies are most likely to respond. Write the news release so it can easily be used as an article with few changes, and I will send you out a sample soon. Shirley, would you please keep a track of all the things I promise? Emphasize visuals, especially in TV, but not only. Again, all the newspapers are going visual. They want photos. Saturday and Sunday, you know, you might be surprised at the TV showing up, particularly in a medium or small article. They're looking for feel-good stories. Consider this. Consider asking a TV person to be the master of ceremonies for everything but the service itself. They could be the ones to announce the winners of the raffles, and maybe they could walk around talking to the different vendors or something, you know, anything like that. Many stations will send, you know, some junior person. They're not, you know, you're probably not going to get their lead person. And if they do, you will be mentioned several times on air. You know, our weatherman Betty is going to be at this church tomorrow, type of thing. All right, when you're talking about a news release, this is who it's going to. It's going to a person who is overwhelmed. They don't have, they're just overwhelmed. And the half-second rule applies here just as well as anyone else. This is their Post-it note, if you will, or laying around on their desk. They have all these things, and they maybe can cover one or two. That's as much as they can do. And so our dream is, our key is, we want them the hook. We need to find the hook, the thing that will say to them, this is the story I want to cover, and drag them in. Again, that half-second rule. We can't give them too long to look at it, or they'll just give up on it. So this is a press release, kind of a rough out that I did last year. And I wish I remembered who that came up with the title, Awe-Inspiring Experience. I love it. But notice what happens. You got that, which is an exciting phrase, great visuals, particularly for TV, but not just TV. And then the first two words are no unicorns. All right. So the idea is, okay, what are they talking about? And the editor will start to read down a little bit. And if you look, and I'll send you, like I say, an example that'll actually probably start this way. There's plenty to do. One of the things you want to do is have some quotes. Usually a quote from your pastor, from your priest, and maybe a quote from a layperson. You know, it's just being realistic. The weeklies in particular, one person, lots of times, at the most two, is the reporter, the editor, the person in charge of advertising, the person in charge of circulation, you know, all that. So the more you can do for them, the more likely they are to respond. One of the most important things to make sure you have is direct phone numbers for them to get more information. They're working on this at 8 o'clock at night. Giving them the church office phone number is not much help. Now, you may have that first, but then you have others that they feel confident they can reach. On non-social media, just some examples. The banners at the church, they of course are at least moderately expensive. You want to aim for it to be readable from the furthest traffic lane at 5 miles an hour over the speed limit, which means you can't have a lot of words. Graphics can work better. You can use the same graphics if you come up with a symbol, a logo you really like, use it over and over and over again. You can change the dates by simply gluing some Velcro over the date and use the put a new date on there, and you can use it again next year. We're doing that at a couple churches. Most important maybe is be careful where you're hanging it is really a strong support system. Most church banners I see do not leave a good impression because they folded in, they're crumpled up, they're, you really can't read them, and it looks like people don't care. This is my favorite system. It's the church in in Greensboro, North Carolina. What they did is they put their permanent part of the sign up high, put on strong 4x4 supports, and then they just put banners down below when they have something special coming up. Works great. Easy, Posters can be helpful. And again, use your graphics over and over. The problem is they were probably more helpful 10 or 20 years ago because the parents would come into the rec center or the school or wherever and have a chance to see the posters. Now they pretty much drop them off. But, in downtown, it can be a good place. But also places like dog parks, any of your vendors that are coming, your vet, your dog groomer, whatever, walking trails, particularly if people walk their dogs on it, can be a good spot. You have to be a little careful of rules, but don't tell me I told you to break the rules. But the honest to God truth is they're unlikely to be removed quickly, so they'll stay up for a couple days. Apartments frequently have poster areas next to mailboxes. Now there you probably want to use no more than a half sheet of paper, maybe even less. They don't have a lot of room. All of this I like spraying with clear varnish. It helps to protect the poster or whatever against the weather, not a hard rain, but mist or whatever. Yard signs are also expensive, but they're one of my favorite ways to go about. And just to cut the price in half. When the elections are over, collect the metal signs from the candidates. I usually give them a couple days in case they want to pick them up themselves, but the metal signs half the cost. I've got a dozen of them out in the garage. They're more flexible than posters because you have more opportunities to use them. School pickup lines can be a great boy, I have to rephrase that, pickup lines. So that sounds bad. Anyway, places where parents are waiting to pick up their kids because the parents are sitting there for 45 minutes. And then when they start moving, they move slow. So they have plenty of time to read your sign. Dog parks and walking trails are good locations, things like a driveway to the pet store. Any of this is more effective with the QR code and the actual written out address to your landing page. All right, as far as the BOTA specifically, what I would recommend, and we're going to talk about the general post in a moment, but ease off on the general post. In other words, put most of your focus on the blessing of the animals 2 to 3 weeks ahead of time. Doesn't mean you can't do one even earlier, but that's when you really want to focus. You can easily make your text stand out, and I will send you a write-up about this. I'm going to show you some information in a second. There's others. This is the site I like the best, coolsymbol.com. And what you can do is make use of the same graphic because, again, what I said before about once people see the graphic, if they continue to see it, it sticks in their mind, and change it in an intention-gathering manner. In other words, if you look at this one below, And by the way, what I have there above the line is what I could do with the coolsymbol.com, a different font, different bold, not bold, that kind of thing. So you have the blessing, the basic information up there, and you have just a general invitation. Then over time, you take exactly that same graphic and you start putting a little bit of additional information. The vet that's coming, the dog groomer. Now, I didn't do a good job on this. I would change your fonts, change your colors so that each one that comes out, those extra words stand up out to you. But you can do the, different things coming. The fact if you're allowing people to just bring a photo, make a big deal about that. What prizes are you offering? If you're going to allow entries for your prizes before the blessing of the animals, that's a great thing to talk about and leave an application form. This just real quick, this is the coolsymbol.com. They have several pages of information, but this is what I meant. This is like a quarter of the fonts that are available. I primarily use, you've probably noticed this in my emails, the bold script font. I will occasionally use the handwritten. Mainly though, I use the script, or I use the bold or bold italics. So I'm not getting real super fancy, but it just makes it stand out. If you know any unusual animals will be present, whatever, a camel, use a photo of that. Again, if you're going to allow the blessing of photos or videos, say that. Go ahead and plan ahead of time for 3 to 5 posts after the boat. We're trying to build a relationship, and what we want to do is try to generate the "I wish we had gone" reaction. And those are great ones for members to comment about. Just simply say, "Oh, that was so much fun. I love seeing the donkey," whatever. I encourage clergy to do a sermon related to animals, creation care, something like that, 2, 3, 4 weeks after the blessing of the animals. That gives you time to assume the people who left contact information are people who are interested in those topics. So you can just say, we're going to be talking about that kind of thing this coming week. Handouts. The big question is, will your people help? This is one place you can get your influencers, the one people I talked about before, involved. If they encourage it, it works. Business cards are a nice size. They aren't very expensive, but go ahead, don't get the cheapest version. Spend a few extra dollars and make them look good. For example, I like the rounded corners, because if you have a bunch of business cards in your pocket, there's a darn good chance the corner's bent. I like even with the GPS, a map on the back. But that's me. Make sure, again, keep the date, time, and place. What I like to do is bless them during a service, maybe 2 weeks in advance, 3 weeks in advance, and having, that should be AN, an influential member hand them out as people leave. If a couple of those people that people look to for ideas are standing in the back saying, "Hey, would you hand out 3 or 5 of these?" Makes all the difference. And you can tell them some places they can give them to. Certainly their neighbors or coworkers. They can stand at the dog park and hand them out. Dog walkers that go by there. I could send out 10 to dog walkers that go by my house. Every vendor should get a stack, so you're going to have to make a lot. But it's one of those things, the first 250 costs so much, but then it's less and less and less as you go on. The food truck might want to advertise that they're going to be present. So some handouts, and check with them about a poster. A lot of food trucks have little posters on their side for where they're going to be next. I sent you a video from Bishop Curry to encourage participation. There's 2 of them, actually. You got the one that encourages your congregation, and I sent it out yesterday, I think. But if you didn't get it, put a note in the chat. And this would be a good thing to use with your vestry or whatever. Also, children are great people. put together an invitation design, like looking a little like a kid would invite somebody to a birthday party, and give them to the kids and ask them to hand them to their friends. And if you're doing things that are fun for kids beyond just the pets, like you're doing a slip and slide or something, talk about that a lot so that their friends will come. But if a kid tells his friends this is the place to be, they'll come. Now we're going to talk about social media for the investment of time and money. Social media is much more effective, and I've focused specifically on Facebook, but if somebody wants to do Instagram or Nextdoor or something, that's fine. That's great. It's just simple. For this, easier for me to nail down. You want to start, this is pre-blessing of the animals, simple posts intended to capture people's attention and intrigue them. All right, let me give you a good example of what I mean by intrigue them. Many churches publish or post their sermons, but there's nothing to say to the people. It just says sermon from this date. It doesn't say why I should care about that sermon. So a few words that says, this is the primary thing that God loves you. Let me explain how God loves you. People are going to go in and read that or listen to it. Also, whenever you're doing something like that, if you can have a question rather than a statement, does God love you? ? People are, and if you think about yourself, if somebody asks a question, your national result, rationale is to answer, to get involved. Tell your story through these posts, but keep it very simple. Again, remember, most people need many interactions, and you only have a half a second. You can use memes, photos, videos, slideshows, anything like that. It's a visual medium. You don't want to use, most of the time, every once in a while you have something, but 99% of the time you don't want to be using a lot of words. And these are just three I yanked out of a location. I think I give you the location on the next slide. Type of thing. Some of them are kind of cartoonish. Perfect location for an Episcopal church is one I really like. And then down at the bottom, I say in the headline, the area above the graphic, say something about your church. Link your church to this ad. So you might say, you certainly are welcome at St. Somewhere. And it's also a good place to always put your landing page link in. Posts about your church can be great attention getters. Boy, my tongue is not working this morning. But don't brag. Don't brag and don't start a conflict. If somebody posts that something anti-gay. Don't say, unlike that church, we. Just say we. You can sort videos or slideshows. They're very easy. Ask the recipient what difference is made. That's something you can do. You go to somebody's picking up food at the food pantry, shoot video from the back. So they have some privacy. But tell them you don't want them to say thanks. You want them to say, my 3 kids would not get to eat this weekend if it weren't for this bag of food. That's what you want, that you're solving a problem. As always, make sure your church name is shown and the reason for the photo. Never a photo of empty buildings. Never a photo of the buildings with doors closed. That does not suggest welcome. Are you proud of your church building? You feel like that's something you really want to encourage? Have a photo of something happening that also shows the building. The one at the bottom, and I don't know, I apologize for that white strip. It wasn't supposed to be there. But they're asking for prayer requests and showing their building. Group pictures can work well. If you have a picture of all your congregants or a large number of them, and you're showing it in your area, people will stop. I guarantee people will stop and see if they know any of the faces. It's just a way to do it. The one on the left, that was one reason I had that one. That gentleman in the Boy Scout uniform is known to half the people in Mount Airy, North Carolina. Just seeing his face, people are going to stop. Why are they talking about him? As I said, this one was asking for prayer requests, the one in the middle, and the third one was oriented toward environment. So you're hitting some key questions. This is what I meant about open doors and people. If you look at the same church, obviously, I guess, the one on the left doesn't feel welcoming. It's a pretty church, historic church, all those kind, but the doors are slammed shut. The one on the right feels more welcoming, even though there's nobody. It'd be even better if there were a couple people, not blocking the site, but just a couple people standing there. Another thing about any posts you do is you want to be seen as welcoming. The first two photos here are of closed groups. There is no space for me to break in. The third one shows a space for me to break in. Now, the first one, if they were spread out a little more and there was an extra empty chair, you could accomplish the same thing. I invite, welcome, connect. And by the way, there's their website. They do some really good work. They distinguish between a group of friends and a friendly church. I might go to a church and say, oh, we're just so friendly. And that's because I'm just talking to my friends all week. But I'm not talking to any new person. All right, that's a group of friends. And honestly, that's most of our churches. It takes some effort to change that atmosphere. This is a little series I really like. Many of us, this is the same church, by the way. Many of us have church buildings or maybe it's just the entrance to the church or something like that people driving by know, but they don't have any idea what it really is. So again, question, do you know us? This would be better with people actually entering the church and the doors open, but this happened to be the one I had. Short videos. Any you can do about yourself is good. Communion, video explaining communion, and I know St. Joseph's has one. They're very important, very important. That's the center part of our service. And people don't, if you're not liturgically background, if you're a Baptist or unchurched or something like that, you have no idea what's going on. And it's also a great way to show the inside of your building. Certainly active youths, any primary ministries. Try to mention, and this one's rolling, it wasn't supposed to do that. But anyway, if it gets back to the front, you'll see I have a slide at the beginning of it that says in 2 minutes. People see that and they say, oh, I can give you 2 minutes. You can post it directly to Facebook or link it to YouTube. I like linking it to YouTube because it's easier for one, a little tad bit easier for one thing. And I can get statistics. Who saw it? Not who, but how many people saw it? How long did they watch it? That kind of thing. And if any possible, ask a question like on Jot Form so you get contact information. And if you get that contact information, respond. It's like somebody walks up and says hello. Well, we want to say hello back. If we ignore them, that's pretty rude. If you want to see some of the ones TriTank has, just go to YouTube and search TriTank. The three I've used the most is what is the Episcopal Church, what is sin, and prayer. All three are oriented toward non-church people, but say a lot to church people too. The one on atonement I really like, but I think again, your call, but I think it's too deep for this very introductory phrase. It's all easy. You can do it. This one here from St. Joseph's, we actually had an ending slide that looked like that had a little bit of graphics on it, a little bit of movement. Always have a good opening. One of the disadvantages of video is if you don't pay attention to it, it puts any slide up it wants as the opening. But you just put a good slide up there. There's again. I didn't know I had it on there twice. Hold on, let me go back to the beginning of this. Yeah, see, there's my opening on it. It just tells them what the topic is, and it only takes 2 minutes. Bad news, really bad news. You can spend all your effort doing all these things, have a post that is just fantastic, and it'll only be seen by about 10 to 20% of your people and the followers to your church. That's it. And that will be predominantly people who already should know about what you're talking about. So, it's not quite a waste, but it's leading that way. So reaction or response number 1 is beg, plead, cajole, threaten members to comment and share as many as possible. You can easily get into the thousands of people seeing it. And if that happens, Facebook actually will start showing it even further. Second of all, search under Facebook groups for appropriate groups to your area. Make sure you search surrounding towns. I would say anything within, a reasonable commute of your church. Make sure you ask at that town because it may have a totally different section. You can easily get into thousands of people seeing your post and you haven't spent a penny. Well, why don't you do that again? All right, this is what I meant about groups. You got Mount Airy and Surrey County, just groups, 7,700 members. Forum, 2,100 members. LGBT, 368 members. So, you can do great outreach this way. And I don't know, is it Marcy or Gail? One of you I owe a response to on a question about posting on these groups, and I will. That's on my list. I'll get there. Third option is, of course, pay for ads. General kind of, you'll pay about a penny for each account that sees your post. That doesn't mean anybody's actually looked at it. It just means it's been on their account. It's very easy to do. I have a step-by-step video. You can target it, say, show it only to people who've shown it in pets or animals. One option some churches have done is ask people, will you help us make this church you love better known to the community around us by contributing $30. Like $30 is a pretty reasonable amount for one campaign. And that's 2,000 to 3,000 people. All right, outside groups. Most of us have groups that meet at your church. And we just assume if we even think about them, they feel invited. So, the neighborhood garden club. Personally, what I would do is occasionally drop in at the start of their meeting, just to, maybe once a year. Just say hello, say, hey, how's it going, that kind of thing, and invite them to the Sunday service or anything special. Always have a poster where they're leaving. That's an invite. Leave contact cards on the table or back of the chair. Probably just occasionally, but if they meet once a quarter, maybe you want to do it every time. And invite them to anything special, like blessing of the animals. Here's what I meant about a poster. This is from St. Andrews in Greensboro, North Carolina. It's actually not, nobody from St. Andrews is on. It actually has a lot of problems, but it's 100% better than having nothing at all. Because it actually has a lot of jargon. What's reflections on the readings? Well, I guess I can guess that is. But what's an undercroft? That kind of stuff. What do you want them? They're here to talk plants and flowers in the neighborhood. What do you want them to leave knowing about your church? Do you want them to leave feeling like they're invited? The blessing of the animals is a great thing. And if you have a preschool, please do not forget to do it through them. In all communications, including the outside groups, you want to intrigue, not just announce. So these are 2 posts that were done at a church. I love the one of the little girl and the headline, the 5 weirdest things Jesus said in John's gospel. Think how much more intriguing that is than a Bible study on John's gospel. Uh, the three most intriguing characters in John is the other one. And he used several of these. We want to intrigue people, not just we're assuming they're not interested, and we're probably right. So we need to find a way to change that. So the most important word is intrigue. Remember, again, you're not going to do everything. I've thrown a bunch of stuff at you in the last 45 minutes. You're not going to be able to do them all. Anything you have questions about, you're saying, I'm not sure how to do that, please ask me. Most of the time, I can just do one for you and then train you later. Again, remember, it's what works in your context, not what works in my context. I've tried very hard to pick ideas from a variety of churches. So there's one here that fits you, but if it doesn't, don't. Have fun. I know that's hard right now because I'm giving you all this stuff to do. But if you're excited about your church and excited about what's going on, and that comes across in your communications, that makes all the difference. And of course, pray. Every time a post comes up, pray about it before you hit publish. Every time you see one from your church, it doesn't have to be any lengthy, look in the prayer, but just, dear God, I hope this touches somebody today type of prayer. And certainly if you get a response on anyone, make a point of praying for that person.